morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
It does my heart good to see so many young hands these days, men and women who have chosen a life with cattle and horses and are honoring our ranching and cowboy traditions in such a great way. This week I'll visit with a good hand who earns his wages at one of the biggest ranches in the West, and he'll share some of his early horsemanship education.
He'd have bucked me off a lot quicker if he'd have just figured out how to get out from underneath of me. I was spread-eagled over the saddle a couple of times, just clawing like a cat trying to get away from him.
Travis Beaton, and he was one of our judges at the colt starting competition at the 40th annual Ivan Danes Country Music Picnic last August. And Baxter Black has a pretty interesting commentary.
That's a hard way to make a living. Yep, but it's even a harder way not to make a living.
And that will be all about rodeo at the college level. And for the first time, you'll hear the new U.S. Agriculture Secretary nominee on this week's Rangeland News.
We go to embargoing or putting a shutdown on there. There will be retaliation there for our products.
And the one and only Waddy Mitchell is in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight. Boy, they don't get any better. And another classic, Song of the West, and boy, it took some time to track down who wrote this one, but I think we've got it right. And on the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, what does it take to make a really good horse trainer? And I'll visit with top hand Travis Beaton after Sam Lowe gets us going.
We've been running in the West for many, many years, using all our senses to conquer all our fears. We've made it through the droughts, some years with no feed, waiting on the desert grass to green up and drop its seed. Running in the West, the wind in our mane. We're the mighty Mustangs, roaming wild and untamed. Don't know our own history, bloodlines don't really count. From old soldiers' ponies or Comanches' courageous mount, across the sagebrush flats, high in pinyon pines, we run hard with the wind and hear coyotes whine. Running in the West, the wind in our mane. We're the mighty Mustangs, roaming wild and untamed. Up and down the hills, how far we don't care, pushing to the sunset, my little band of mares. We're a part of history, reminder of days gone by, a part of America, like old glory flying high. Running in the West, the wind in our mane. Mustangs roaming wild and untamed, running in the west. The wind in our mane, we're the mighty Mustangs roaming wild and untamed. We're the mighty Mustangs roaming wild and untamed.
Neat song about the wild horses of the West from Sam Lowe. Well, we had just wrapped up a great display of colt starting at the 40th annual Ivan Daines Country Music Picnic, and the head of our judging panel, Travis Beaton, told me how he started down the trail of being a working cowboy.
I got a family that's pretty deep-rooted in rodeo, grandfathers and great uncles and such like that were original members of the CRCA when it first formed, and had a great uncle that was one phenomenal trick roper and horses and such, you know, as I was growing up, and got into horsemanship through basically from my dad. He really stressed horsemanship a lot, and from that, you know, we had horses around all the time. You know, I grew up basically in town, for the most part from Cochrane till I was in my early teens, and then we kind of floated around. My dad worked in the oil patch too, you know, and he rodeoed for a lot of years. And then we kind of got into team roping, and that was a big thing that really kind of motivated me until I got into my 20s. I got into riding bulls for a while, did that for a while. And then when I got back team roping, I thought, you know, the best way to improve this team roping success is through horsemanship. So I got studying that a little bit, and I got a couple of breaks earlier on. A fella who's kind of a shirt tail relative, Kevin Pohl, he had me come down and work with him at Lethbridge, and I spent a couple of years down there. And that was kind of the first, you know, real eye-opener for me about horsemanship. You know, I went down there thinking, boy, I've been riding horses since I was 6, 7 years old. Here I'm in my middle 20s. There ain't much you could teach me about horses, but it didn't take me long to realize how much I didn't know.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, from there it's just kind of come on, and I've spent the last, you know, most of the last 20, 22 years working in the oil patch, but always kept my, you know, the back of my mind's always been on horses and roping and cowboying and rodeoing that. And
where did some of your first cowboy and ranch jobs start?
I worked a lot, you know, here and there, friends and stuff like that. We go and gather some cows or go to some brandings and this and that. I worked for, you know, guys here and there off and on, riding some colts and doing a little bit of cow work, but just kind of on the back burner most of the time. And here a couple of years ago when the oil patch started to kind of dwindle down again for about the third time that I went through, I kind of got sick of it, and I thought, you know, I got to get something where I've got, you know, a couple of kids now and wife and stuff, and I got to get something a little more stable. And a friend of mine was working down on the McIntyre Ranch, and he said, well, throw your name in the hat. They're looking for somebody. So I give him a call, and by golly, I got the job down there, and been down there be 2 years this coming March. And better job I've never had, you know, better bunch of people I don't think I've ever worked with, you know, and just seemed like a pretty natural fit that way, you know.
Oh, yeah, and like a lot of good hands, Travis has survived his share of scary bronc rides, and he'll describe one of them, and one of my favorite songs about branding day, coming up when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The history of Alberta's famous McIntyre Ranch goes back over 150 years. By 1870, 6,000 Texas Longhorns had been trailed from the deep south to reside on that vast spread, and it's been home to a lot of good cowboys and top hands. And I asked Travis Beaton if his job there means lots of time horseback.
There's a fair amount. You know, it depends on the time of year. You know, when we get into the springtime, and yeah, we're astride a horse quite a bit between calving and, you know, and moving herds and stuff like that. And then when we get through the calving, then you're sorting pairs and moving more herds, and then more branding, and so we get a pretty good amount of time riding horses,
Be a lot of branding for the number of mother cows and number of calves you got.
Oh yeah, I mean, we spend quite a bit of time branding. There's an efficiency to it that is pretty important to the management of the place. So, as much as we'd like to be able to do things more traditionally and do a lot of roping, but we do most of it through a chute.
I pretend I didn't hear that.
It's kind of hard to do, but we do get. He does throw us a bone, and we do get to play around quite a bit and do some roping. But through the summer months, we also get a lot of herds of cattle to doctor, and there's a lot of country to cover out there.
Oh, I can just imagine. It'd just be kind of cowboy heaven when you got
it really is
1,200 cows or heifers or something strung out ahead of you.
Yeah, you bet it is.
A couple of guys.
There's not too many days out there where you can't look around and grin and think, I'm getting paid to do this.
Yeah. The big difference to our country, where you get a little open meadow that's maybe 45 acres, and you can actually see whether you got 50 or 200 ahead of you, because all you see is a bush moving and crashing before that.
Yeah, you bet.
Open country be something.
Yeah, it is open country, but it's broken up pretty good. A lot of coulees and a lot of draws and stuff like that, and you can hide a lot of cows out there.
Oh yeah.
There's no trees really to speak of, but boy, they can get hid pretty good.
Oh, I know, down in the little dips, and now you can ride right by them. And
sure, you bet. Yeah, it's awesome country, big country.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this trainers colt starting competition here at the Danes Ranch, and I got the idea you guys did too, sitting on the judges' table. It was really something.
Yeah, this is actually the third time I've been in Innisfail. I've been here twice previously competing, and to come here and get the opportunity to judge it was really interesting. Get to see a lot of different styles, and see how everybody kind of works through different things. It's really interesting. And from a horseman standpoint, a horseman, as far as I'm concerned, is a synonym for a student. When you really understand horsemanship, it's about learning and absorbing stuff. And, there's a great opportunity to sit out there and really get to, when they pin you down, you can't go and get a beer.
That's right. Yeah.
You got to sit and watch, and you learn a lot from it, It was hard, though. It was one of the most difficult things I've done.
I had to judge the Road to the Horse about 2013 or something, and after I got through that, I said, I'm not going to do this again, even if they asked me. It's not easy. I'd much rather be where I was today than be there with a clipboard and trying to put points on a piece of paper.
Yeah, it's tough. It's difficult. You really got to check your emotions and just really be neutral, watching what's going on, and really look at the merits of each trainer, and the level of difficulty and the challenge from each individual horse. And really try to take a blind eye and not look around at how they're doing compared to others and stuff like that. So.
And there's more from Travis, including the story of one of his best bronc rides after ranch wife Jean Prescott comes along with a song about what a lot of us are enjoying these days. I just love waking up early, feeding my horses, loading up and heading to a neighbor's ranch because it's another branding day.
It happens mostly in the spring when all the calves are here. Excitement builds as plans are made for branding day each year. The rancher calls a list of names he's jotted in his book. The wife starts making plans for all the things she's gonna cook. Biscuits, beans, and steak and gravy, fried taters piled up high, green beans from summer's garden, homemade cakes and pies. They'll wash it down with iced tea and coffee with dessert. And with the thank you ma'am, they'll tip their hats and get back out to work. He lines up vaccine bottles, she bakes dozen pies. The day before they'll set up pins, she'll feed a dozen guys. Then finally branding day arrives, he's lined up quite a bunch. She'll cook dinner and supper, along with that there's lunch. Biscuits, beans, and steak and gravy, fried taters piled up high, green beans from summer's garden, homemade cakes and pies. They'll wash it down with iced tea and coffee with dessert. And with the thank you ma'am, they'll tip their hats and get back out to work. Of course, the more help he has, the more she has to do. It takes a lot of beef and beans to feed a Brandon crew. After hauling chairs and tables and working several days, Brandon's finally over and she crawls in bed and prays. If I should die before I wake, I pray I never have to bake another cake, another pie on that big ranch way up in the sky. But soon the rooster's crowing and fresh new day begins, and it won't be long till next year when it's Brandon Day again. Biscuits, beans, and steak and gravy, fried taters piled up high, green beans from summer's garden, homemade cakes and pies. They'll wash it down with iced tea and coffee with dessert. With a thank you, ma'am, they'll tip their hats and get back out to work. With a thank you, ma'am, they'll tip their hats and get back out to work.
So, how about some of the tough horses Travis Beaton has experienced?
Well, I'll never forget the first colt that I started working for Kevin Pohl. It was a big bay quarter horse. Boy, he'd been 16-2 or better, 2 or 3 year old, something like that. And I remember we brought him in the first day, and we did a little bit of work in the arena with him on the ground, got him saddled, and I got on him, and that horse bucked me off 5 times in a row, as slick as can be. And the last time, he'd have bucked me off a lot quicker if he'd have just figured out how to get out from underneath of me. I was spread eagled over the saddle a couple of times, just clawing like a cat trying to get away from him, and he was just an absolutely really troubled horse. He really hadn't had the opportunity, I think, up to that point to really quiet down and use his head a little bit. And we got through him, and you know what? That's probably the best horse I think I've ever been on. By the time we got done, it was such a difference from day one to the time he left. That horse was completely different horse. So that one, probably more than anything, really sold me on this horsemanship stuff. Right. And using kind of what I like to call neck up horsemanship. Use your head a little bit. It's easier on the body too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, we trust our lives to them, when we're out there with a job to do, and a lot of the time we're just out there all by ourselves, and we got a great big circle to ride, and we trust that old pony to bring us home at the end of that day.
Absolutely. Trust is the number one thing, and horsemanship is all about communication. And the number one most important thing about communication, being married, you'd understand this, is listening. And understanding what you're being told. And them horses will tell you anything that you want, provided that you really listen to them.
Yeah.
And when they understand that, number one, that you're paying attention to them and you're listening to them and catching all them little cues, boy, they come around pretty quick and want to come to the dance. We've seen it today in this Trainer's Challenge and over the last 3 days, we've seen it with Scott here on my colt he had. Boy, he sure had a hard time trying to get things through that horse, but I think at the end of the day, he's got something done.
Coming up, Baxter Black looks at College Rodeo, got a song about the big prairie sky, and then the Rangeland News when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at the College Rodeo team.
What makes America the most productive, generous country on earth? Well, it's ordinary people like us working together to achieve extraordinary things. B&W builds the trailer hitches that hook the loads that haul the grain, the coal, the cattle, cotton, gas, horses, and RVs that keep America on the road. Quality made, employee-owned, and customer-tuned. B&W trailer hitches, working together to keep America proud.
Hi, I'm Peyton Manning. I play for the Tennessee Volunteers football team, and we're having a raffle to pay travel expenses to the games. Would you be interested in buying some tickets? Well, when was the last time the Kansas State Letterman's Club had a car wash in the parking lot to make money to buy the basketball team new shorts? You reckon any Big 10, Big 8, Small 16, Ivy League, Industrial League, WAC, SWAC, THWAC, or Humpback Athletic Conference has to send their players out selling cookies or magazine subscriptions to fund the NCAA team expenses? Not likely. Unless, of course, it was the rodeo team. Oh, well, that's different, you say? Well, it is different, I guess, in that individuals can win money on the rodeo team, but the best way to put rodeo earnings in perspective is a short conversation I overheard at a rodeo watching a bareback rider get his laundry aired out. Boy, that's a hard way to make a living. Yep, but it's even a harder way not to make a living. Well, maybe it's not fair to compare rodeo to football or basketball. Those two sports are supposed to generate enough income to finance everything else, but that reasoning is no longer valid since the advent of equal opportunity funding, i.e. a student golfer should be treated as well as a student running back. After all, what are they in college for? Yet most college rodeo teams are required to pay for a big portion of their own expenses. But some teams are lucky. They have active support groups in their community that help them, that give them advice. Alumni, parents, friends, teachers, all fans of rodeo and young people. But the students are usually in the thick of the fundraising projects. Not the brains, mind you, but the brawn, and it's good training. Nowadays you see pro rodeo champions promoting jeans, shirts, ropes, pickups, and all manner of cowboy paraphernalia, and they make it look so easy. But remember, they learned it the hard way. Hi, I'm Tuff Hedeman, and I'm on the rodeo team here at Sul State University, and we're having a raffle to... You see what I mean?
This is Baxter Black
On Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan.
brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl.
We will have the new U.S. Secretary of Agriculture nominee on the Rangeland News looking at international trade. And new developments could mean that solar energy will power more and more farm and ranch homes for less money than hydro. And so much more coming up on the Rangeland News right after a nice song about a big prairie sky from Alan and Arnell.
Come ride with me down a long gravel road to a sweet sanctuary that I call my home. Alberta wild roses, they bloom in the field, and a big prairie sky, a blue prairie sky, it's my home. Well, I need blue skies and clouds up above. In the distance, those mountains and a sweetie I love. A safe place to lay down with good books to read, and a big prairie sky, a blue prairie sky, it's my home. Sunbeams and moonbeams would mark all the days, surrounding the moments in so many ways. Roots deep as the maples that grow by the road, and a big prairie sky, a blue prairie sky, it's my home. Sunbeams and moonbeams would mark all the days, surrounding the moments in so many ways. Roots deep as the maples that grow by the road, and a big prairie sky, a blue prairie sky, yes, it's my prairie sky, and I'm home.
The news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
Top of page one, the new U.S. Agriculture Secretary nominee is kind of settling into his job. Sonny Perdue does not support a total ban on meat products from Brazil in the wake of a tainted meat scandal there. And Stephanie Ho has more detail.
Ag Secretary nominee Sonny Perdue applauded the agency's decision to step up inspections for meat from Brazil after tainted meat was found there.
Senator, I believe that the men and women of the FSIS are doing a wonderful job going to the 100% inspection there coming in.
At the same time, he told a Senate confirmation hearing that he did not support a total ban on Brazilian meat.
I'm concerned, obviously, if we go to embargoing at this, where these plants were not shipping in the U.S., if we go to embargoing or putting a shutdown on there will be retaliation there for our products.
He says the U.S. has had recent troubles of its own.
We've had some high-path avian influenza, and some countries have responded in that way. So while that's very, very localized, I don't want to punish another country.
USDA officials work with customs officials to ensure that products are safe before they enter the country. This is Stephanie Ho reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Meanwhile, major fast food chains in South Korea and Hong Kong have pulled chicken, beef, and pork off their menus as they scramble to reassure their customers about food safety as Brazil's meat scandal crisis goes on. The drastic steps by Burger King and Mom's Touch in South Korea and Hong Kong's top fast food chain Café de Coral are aimed at avoiding a customer backlash after Brazilian police accused inspectors in the world's biggest exporter of beef and poultry of taking bribes to allow sales of rotten and salmonella-tainted meats. Well, Saturday, June the 3rd, there's a very important fundraising ride-a-thon for a group that does a lot of great work. Brightwood Ranch, part of Hope Mission, is a camp for underprivileged kids, mostly single-parent foster home or some time of guardianship, and the ride-a-thon gives these kids a chance to come for a week-long camp, have fun, and just be kids and get extra support. And the funds that you raise in the ride-a-thon will help these kids come to camp. You can ride your own horse or reserve one of theirs. There's no age limit, but kids under 15 need to be accompanied by adult. A deposit of $50 will be required if you intend to use one of the camp horses, and that will be given back to you provided you attend the ride. You can camp at the ranch or stay in one of the cabins, and all 3 meals of the day are provided. Usually about 100 riders and 100 prizes, and they ride on a 13,000-acre grazing preserve. And some of the grand prizes, a brand new saddle or a yearling paint filly. Wow. For more information, you can call 780-422-2018, 780-422-2018, or email we.care at hopemission.com. Well, a while ago, a couple of good cowboys were describing the romantic cowboy job of doctoring screwworms, much more common years ago than it is now. But how about this? USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS, is announcing the successful eradication of the New World screwworm from Florida. Dr. Jack Shear, the USDA chief veterinarian, reported that close to 154 million sterile flies have been released. 16,902 animals have been inspected at checkpoints, and almost 430 hours of active surveillance in the Florida Keys, and 250 hours of active surveillance on the mainland have been completed, and they have found that the New World screwworm is gone from the U.S. once again. Well, a lot of ranches and farms are looking at solar power or wind power as an option to hydro as the hydro rates continue to go up. And just a month ago was the day that Denmark successfully powered the entire nation from wind power. Denmark was able to generate 97 gigawatt hours of energy solely from wind turbines. The total combined power generated within that 24-hour period is enough to power 10 million average homes. Now, with this achievement, Denmark officially broke the record for the most energy generated by a single turbine in one day. And here's another one from the Rangeland News at the high tech of the future. On July 1st, 2017, Virginia will be the first U.S. state to have passed a law allowing delivery robots to operate on sidewalks and crosswalks across the state. Virginia lawmakers Ron Villanova and Bill DeSteff partnered with Starship Technologies to draft the legislation. Although the robots are allowed to navigate autonomously, the bots cannot exceed 10 miles an hour or weigh over 50 pounds. Companies like Amazon and Grubhub sent the state support letters for this new law, and Postmates has already started testing its robots in D.C. Well, Saturday, May the 13th. Hey, that's next weekend. That'll be a great chance to visit with your neighbors you haven't seen all winter. The big spring consignment machinery sale at the BC Livestock Co-op in Kamloops, where you can bid on lots of treasures, including that beautifully restored 1973 Massey Ferguson tractor, rebuilt from the ground up by Mark McMillan. Tires, brakes, engine, hydraulics, steering, new dash instruments, new seat. Beautiful paint job, taking it right back to the factory specs, and much, much more. And you can get all the details at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, across the Rockies, there are regular cattle sales every Wednesday, and of course 2 horse sales a month. And you can find out all about their other special sales at InnisvaleAuctionMarket.com. And that takes us down to the final item. Got a number of questions a lot of cowboys wonder about when they're sitting there waiting for a liner to come and pick up some cattle. Like, for example, why don't we ever see the headline, "Psychic Wins Lottery"? And why is abbreviated such a long word? And why is lemon juice made with artificial flavor and dishwashing liquid made with real lemons? And when dog food is new and improved, who tastes it? Now, why didn't Noah swat those 2 mosquitoes when he found them on the ark? And the final question, you know that indestructible black box that they use on airplanes? Well, why don't they make the whole plane out of that stuff? And that is the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, what does it take to make a really good horse trainer? And more from top hand Travis Beaton when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Just ahead of the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, here's a question for you. Can you figure out what big-name country music star is singing this old cowboy song, Cattle Call?
Prowling, the coyotes are howling way out where the doggies bawl. Spurs are jingling, a cowboy is singing this lonesome cattle call. And he rounds up the cattle each fall. Do, 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 singing his cattle call. For hours he'd ride on the range far and wide as the night winds blew up a squall. His heart was a feather in all kinds of weather. He sang his cattle call. As brown as a berry from riding the prairie, and he sings with an old western drawl. Do,
you said that is Dwight Yoakam. You got it right.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
A question I often get asked, what does it take to make a really good horse trainer? And we'll look into that in just a minute. Experience the true spirit of the West at Canada's largest Western store, Irvine Tack and Western Wear. If you need a curb strap or a 4-star gooseneck trailer, you'll find it here. A saddle for every rider. Cutters, reiners, penners, trainers, work and ranch cowboys, ropers. They have over 1,200 in stock. And they have Western wear for the entire family. And how about a gift card? Shop online at irvinesaddles.ca. Free shipping on orders of over $100. irvinesaddle.ca, 1-877-946-9494. I've had a lot of folks ask me what it takes to be a great horse trainer, and I said, I'm not sure you're asking the right person, but I have put in a lot of years starting colts and trying to develop good horses, so I'll share a few thoughts. I think if you don't truly love horses, not just riding them, but being around them, taking care of them, and hanging out with them, you might consider another career. If you want a great financial return on your time, maybe you should think about doing something else. If you're a little intimidated by a high-energy, nervous horse or one that can be a little bronky, maybe this isn't for you. If you have a bit of a short fuse and you might let your emotions overtake you when you're working with animals, then find something else to do. If you think that any horse will do whatever you want to teach him, if you can make him like you enough, that won't work. If you figure horses think like people and will respond the way our kids and friends do or should, well, no, I'm afraid you got a lot to learn. Maybe a career in politics. However, if you're willing to seek out and learn from the very best, really try to understand how they do what they do with horses, that's a good place to start. If you're willing to spend endless hours working with horses, being really tuned into them, that's a good start. If you can understand that horses will be disappointing and frustrating to you when it all goes wrong, without taking it personally, well, that's a good start. If you can develop the feel, the timing, the balance, and the finesse, and still be capable of riding through the rough spots, well, you might be on your way. Now, if you get me started on this, I'm liable to go on for hours, but that's about all the time we have right now. There is so much more to it, but I hope this helps a little bit. And I know this helps our horses a lot. That's a daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration. Find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. And for Irvine Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Well, we were standing there between the buck and chutes at the Danes Rodeo Ranch near Innisvale last August, and the colt starting competition had just wrapped up. It was won by Corey McAllister, and I got to do the commentary with a wireless mic on horseback riding Kelly Leann's beautiful filly Noel, and Travis Beaton was part of our judging panel, and we talked about another trainer's colt starting event that he competed in Ontario.
With Cade Mills and Sean Seabrook, and we competed there, and from what I understand, was the first Trainers Challenge they had out there. And what was really interesting, it was a great weekend, but the most interesting part of it was the interest from the people, from the general public. You know, as we went through it from day one towards the finals, the crowds just got bigger and bigger, almost exponentially. And the interest from the people individually, I mean, people were coming up to me all weekend long, from the venue we were doing it in to the hotel we were staying in to walking down the street to get a newspaper. People were coming up and asking questions about it, and a lot of people were wanting to, you know, express some support, and there was lots of questions about their horses and where they can, you know, figure this stuff out. So there's a lot of people out there that really are interested in this. But I think in some ways there's a bit of a stigma to it. It seems like a lot of people don't necessarily want to come out for the help. Maybe like they feel that they might get embarrassed because they maybe don't necessarily know what they think they should. You know, it's really odd the way people around horses think.
I know. And so many people are so concerned about what somebody else thinks about what they're doing with their horse, you know, and that's not...
My dad used to tell me all the time, he says, you know what, it's none of my business what other people think of me, and I try to adopt that as much as I can, and I think that's a great way to live. And you know, horsemanship to me is such a great precursor to just life skills, because,
oh yeah,
I mean, it's so much about teaching you patience and humility, learning about discipline and more importantly when discipline needs to come into play, and you know, how to get through stuff and realize that, you know, it can't always be perfect, but you know, it can get perfect as long as you stay forward moving with things, you know.
Well, it's been great working with you, Travis, and I really enjoyed the whole weekend for sure. And I just hope maybe next year this time we can get back here together again.
Absolutely, I'd love to. It's been a good time and a great pleasure.
Okay, thanks, Travis. Appreciate it.
All right, and here's a pretty good combination, too. This is Corb Lund and Ian Tyson.
The rodeo's over, the folks have gone home, and the cowboys are all down the road.
Well, boys, it was a good one. Kicked a hole in the sky. And even them rank ones got a road.
It was as wild as they come, and it was almighty western, and none of us thought it could end. But finish it did, with a bang and a whistle. And now I must leave you, my friend. We may do it again in some future season, but somehow it won't be the same.
'Cause our draws, they'll be different, and our injuries will heal. And it's likely the weather will change.
So take from the lessons and be glad for the memories of the days that we rode in the sun. 'Cause after today, there ain't no man can claim that we did have us a good run. Burn all the blankets and dry all the tears, 'cause we can always go further out west. And I'll meet you out there in the vastness somewhere, I swear it, but first I must rest. Rodeo's over, the folks have gone home, and the cowboys are all down the road.
Well, when I started researching this week's classic Song of the West, man, I went down a few blind alleys, but you'll hear the song and the story behind it. And then we have Waddy Mitchell in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. You know, when I started looking into the history behind this week's classic Song of the West, I kind of opened up a can of worms. Now, the song was featured in a Gene Autry movie from 1937. The movie title was Roundup Time in Texas, and I think it may have been the first movie that Gene starred in. Now, some sources said the song was written by Johnny Mercer. Well, Johnny did write a pile of successful songs, including some Western ones like I'm an Old Cowhand from the Rio Grande, but I think this is the true story. Jim Bob Tinsley tells in his book, For a Cowboy Has to Sing, how the song was written in 1930 during a radio broadcast of a show called Blue Monday Jamboree on KFRC in San Francisco, when a rich Texas oil man called in and offered $250 if the two guests on the show, Nat Vincent and Fred Howard, could write a song and play it before the show ended. And they did. And this song that they wrote has been recorded hundreds of times by folks like Burl Ives, Gene Autry, Bing Crosby, and many more, including Johnny Mercer. And the correct title is When the Bloom is on the Sage. Done here by the group that will be touring Western Canada very shortly, the sensational Sons of the Pioneers.
When it's roundup time in Texas and the bloom is on the sage, how I long to be in Texas, like a riding on the range, just to smell the bacon frying when it's sizzling in the pan. Hear the breakfast horn in the early morning, drinking coffee from a can. Just a riding, rocking, roping, pounding leather all day long. Just a swaying, sweating, swearing, listening to the cowhand song. How it beckons and I reckon I would work for any wage to be free again, just to be again where the bloom is on the sage.
To most folks there's a spot that lives forever, deep down within their fondest memory. Though I have been a rover, I have never seen any place on earth I'd rather be.
When it's roundup time in Texas and the bloom is on the sage, how I long to be in Texas, like a riding on the range, just to smell the bacon frying when it's sizzling in the pan. Hear the breakfast horn in the early morning, drinking coffee from a can. Just a riding, rocking, roping, pounded leather all day long. Just a swaying, sweating, swearing, listen to the cowhand song. How it beckons and I reckon I would work for any wage to be free again, just to be again where the bloom is on the sage.
And that's the group that folks across Western Canada will be hearing, the current edition of the Sons of the Pioneers. Now, when it comes to cowboy poetry, not many do it better than Waddy Mitchell. Here he is in a live performance with one he wrote called A Goat on a Rope.
Two misplaced northern buckaroos were paid to wear out new horseshoes one summer east of Santa Cruz, just north of Santa Fe. They'd eat dry biscuits, stale and stark, and long before the dawn embark upon their circles in the dark to beat the heat of day. You see, midday's too hot for cows or men. They'd try to get things done by 10, head back to camp, chow down, and then shade up and try to sleep. But one day the job just took too long. The more they worked, the more went wrong. They'd have sold their saddles for a song till they reached an old homestead. The cabin's roof had fallen in, so had the barn and barnyard pen. Still underneath their hats were grins, 'cause a well stood in the yard, and a long cool drink sure sounded good. The bucket there was made of wood, the rope was gone, but lasso should do nicely in a pinch. But when 50 foot of nylon tied to 60 more of good rawhide still proved too short, the two decided they best improvise. We can pull some cholla from the ground and twist its fibers round and round, build a rope to reach on down, dip ourselves a drink. Yeah, we both could twist a rope up stout, but if we're gonna end this drought, we have to somehow figure out how long it needs to be. The plan they came up with was swell. They'd drop a rock down in that well and guesstimate how far it fell. Basic geometry. So they tossed a good-sized pebble in and listened, but to their chagrin there came no sound or echoing. How deep is this here well? Must be some swirling air down there that makes the sound just disappear before it reaches us up here. Let's try a bigger rock. So they found a boulder wide and flat and heaved it in, both quite sure that when that chunk hit, they'd hear the splat, but they never heard a thing. Now, to feed us something, buckaroos will most emphatically refuse. They'd search for something they could use to guarantee success. In a sagebrush clump nearby, they found this big old railroad tie. Why don't we give this thing a try? We're sure to hear it hit. So down the hole they let it slide, when suddenly from their backside a billy goat at breakneck stride drove headlong down that well. At that they both backed with a bound and stampeded toward safer ground. I do believe that we have found a tunnel straight to hell. when from the trail up stepped a man, and raising up a withered hand said, "Excuse me, amigos, maybe can you tell me where's my goat?" "Well, we hate to tell you this, old friend, but that there goat of yours dove in that well and won't be back again. There ain't no bottom in it." "No, what you say can't be true. That old goat, he would not do what you told me he been up to. That goat is mucho smart." "Well, it may not be your goat down there, but the only goat we seen round here dove down that well and disappeared. I think now so will we." The old man refused to lose all hope. "I don't believe could be my goat. I tie him tight with long well rope the Grande Railroad tie."
Well, thanks so much for making the ride this week, and I sure hope you can saddle up and join us right here next week at the same time. And thanks again to our great support crew. That's Mark and Kathy McMillan. They own and operate Meadow Springs Guest Ranch, a great place to spend a few days or a week or so with great people in a beautiful part of the West. And if you're looking for tractor parts, Mark can help you there. Just go to his website, bctractorparts.com. And there is great reading in every issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. The latest issue has my article on branding pen etiquette. Subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com or just call 1-800-943-7336. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.